This is EE3450 Lab 4 Character LCD module. We start off with the GPIO initialization. We have to, within this experiment, port A, M, D, and E are used. So the clock must be enabled for each port. And then we set the output pins, the direction of the output pins. For port E, pin 0 to 3, pin D, port D, pin 7, port A, pin 6, port M, pin 4, and then we digitally enable all those pins as well. This is the main code for experiment 1. Here we set up a total sum variable, I variable, and previous sum. We set up our GPIO, and we create our LCD object. Down here we connect our data EN, RS, RW to their respective ports and pins. So port E, pin 3 and 0, port D, pin 7, A6, and M4. We start our LCD objects and and load the vertical bar graph fonts. Next, the display is cleared on the LCD module, which then a string is printed out, and it's a series 4, 6, 8, all the way up to 120. Now, the main thing of this experiment is we're going to be calculating the sum of the series, which will be displayed right under it on the character LCD module, equals, and then displaying the sum. That's right here within this while loop. We get the total sum, which is the previous sum plus I, and I is always going to be incremented by 2 because that's the series. In the next row in the position, we're going to have our equal sign, print on our equal sign, and then right next to it, it's going to be printing out our value. Also, in if statements here, if our sum, which should be 3650, is hit, or our R value of 120, which is the maximum of the series, then we break out of the loop and it stops updating the sum. This is experiment 2 for lab 4, and it's simply going to be calculating the sum, max, minimum, and average of an array that was given, which is right here. So we initialize several variables, and we call our setup GPIO. Similarly to experiment 1, we're going to be creating the LCD hardware object, connect our data EN, RS, RW pins to our respective ports and pins of the TiVA board. We're going to start the LCD object and load the vertical bar graph fonts. Then after clearing the display, we're going to be displaying these 4 things within their respective positions: 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 8, 1, 8, which is the sum, average, maximum, and minimum, and that will be found down here in this while loop. For the while loop, we're going to be calculating the max, minimum, and the sum of the array, and then use that to find the average. So for the sum, it's down here in this for loop, which is simply going to get the value of the array starting at 0 and add it into one variable over and until all the values of the array are added. That is our sum. We have this for loop to find our maximum and minimum, which is these 2 if statements. It's going to compare every value of the array, and if it finds one for the max, let's say if it finds one bigger than the other, it's going to keep that and then compare it to another value of the array until you find the maximum. And then same logic for the minimum. It's going to compare one value with another value of the array until it finds the smallest value. And then here our average is just the sum of the array divided by the size of the array. And down here is where we print all the values out on our character LCD. This is Lab 4 Experiment 1. The LCD module will be used to display the series 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus up to 120, adding 2 every time. On the second row, we'll be displaying equals, and our iteration, it will have the sum of our iteration plus the next one, and so on until it gets the full sum, which should equal 3,658. Let's run. And it is always looping to get those values, and it got our value. This is Lab 4 Experiment 2. Here the LCD module will be displaying the sum, maximum, average, and minimum value of an array that was given. And then these values were calculated within the code. That's right. Oh, let me note it first. And there we go. Sum, maximum, average, and minimum values.